Hey there, James here, and you're listening to the Own the Moment podcast, the show where we explore the complex and always evolving landscape of marketing, advertising, and branding, and try to get to the bottom of what it means to be a truly memorable brand. The Own the Moment podcast is brought to you by Como Technologies, a self-service, complete customer engagement platform that helps you cut through the noise to truly connect with your customers and retain and grow those connections over time. With Como, you can build and deploy new campaigns, activations, promotions, and programs in days, not months, and our software is used by some of the world's biggest consumer brands, from Heineken to Budget, Goodman Fielder, Foxtel, JLL, Williams Racing, and McDonald's. Learn more at como.tech. Hi everyone, James here, and you're listening to a special live edition of the Own the Moment podcast, recorded live from within Seven House at Sydney's South by Southwest Festival in late October of this year. Let's get straight into it. Hi everyone, welcome to this special live edition of the Own the Moment podcast. It's my great pleasure today to welcome Justin Dry, one of the founders and CEO of Vinomofo, an innovative wine retailer from here in Australia that is somewhere north of 50 million in sales and boasts a tribe of somewhere around 800,000 raving fans, something we're going to dig into today. But I'd like to begin, of course, by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And I must just apologise in advance. I lost my voice completely yesterday, so you'll have to bear with my raspiness today. Just before we start, who here has heard of Vinomofo? Hands up. Who here has ordered wine from Vinomofo?
That's a good percentage.
So then I guess we don't have to explain too much what Vinomofo is, Justin. But I want to dig into this idea today of building a tribe. I think that's something you've clearly been very successful at. Before we start, are there any numbers you can share? I hinted at a few of the numbers I found online there. Is there anything you can say?
It's definitely north of 50. It's significantly north of that. In terms of mofos, the 800,000 number it's close to that, but that's one of those ones that have engaged with the brand over that period of time. Really, at the core of the business is about 100,000 people that are like regular customers, so active. So It's really a core of 100. The 800 engaged with content and brand, etc. But customer-wise, in a period of time, it's about 100K.
Yeah. And so the name of this session today is building a tribe, and this idea that you can foster relationships and turn customers into raving fans. Tell me, in the early days, Justin, what sort of strategies were you using to gain more than just customers and to?
Yeah. So before Vino, we had 3 other online wine businesses. The first one was a community site, which I basically found Facebook when it was very early. I got invited to it by a friend I was traveling with in the States. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. How would I kind of bring that back into the wine space? I was looking for a new business. And so when I came back to Australia, we launched something called Quaff. And that was like a Facebook for wine. You could rate and review wines. You could friend up with people that were interested in wine. You were sharing stories about wine. And so from that very first one, it was all about kind of connection. And the next one was I filmed a show called Road to Vino, which I'd always wanted to travel around Australia in a combi surfing. So I brought that into my business and basically did that to wine regions and then diverted to the beach and drank wine at the same time. And we filmed it and got sponsored from Wine Australia and a whole bunch of other like tourism bodies and stuff, which was amazing. And that was about kind of connecting with the industry. So we're kind of building these relationships the whole way through. And then another one we did, which is less important, but it was a check-in app for visiting wine regions. But all through those versions that eventually led to kind of Vino, it was all about bringing the community in. And so we would always have these events and tastings and wherever we were going and back at kind of HQ. And so I reckon we probably built the audience in the early days very kind of one-to-one, and then 1 to 20, 1 to 100. It was very small to start with, and then eventually we were like, oh shit, we've got 20 or 30,000 people now, and we feel very close and connected with the audience, and they felt close and connected to us because we'd built it pretty much in person. And then so when we launched Vino, combining all of those businesses, when we kind of introduced our audience to, well, the digital wine guys introduced our audience to this new business, we kind of gave them an offer of like foundational membership, like become a foundation member. It gives you all these amazing things. You'll be invited to all the cool stuff. We had 1,000 people sign up in, like us. It was less than a day. And that kind of launched Vino.
Wow. Any fun stories of the most dedicated or raving fan you've met or encountered?
This one's a bizarre one. So there's been a few over time, but I had this really weird experience because we launched in Singapore in 2017 or thereabouts. And one of the things that we did as in the early days, kind of one of those unscalable things, or it's hard scale, was like handwritten Christmas cards. And we did that for our, first couple of years to everyone, because we didn't have many people. But then as we got bigger, it was like a smaller percentage of the people we could do it for, but it was a really nice kind of thing, and it felt really connecting. I had the whole team line up at a table and we'd pass a card between each of us. We'd find out what they were drinking. We understood the person. It was very personal. Took fucking forever. And everyone's hands were like broken for a couple of days after. But what that resulted in, first year of Singapore, I did all the cards myself because I launched that market. So I went over there and did the kind of the media thing and all the events and did all the startup stuff. And I wrote all the Christmas cards for you. The next year when I was in Singapore doing a bunch of other events, this guy comes up to me in the middle of, those great food markets, the cheap kind of food markets, and taps me on the shoulder. It's like, excuse me, are you Justin from Vinomofo? I was like, I am. Hi, how are you going? Are you a mofo? He said, no, not me. I was like, oh. He's like, my grandmother is. And I was like, are you serious? He's like, she's your biggest fan. I was like, tell me about that. And apparently she was one of our best customers in Singapore, and I sent her a Christmas card, handwritten from the CEO and founder, and she had it up in her fridge ever since. And everyone that came over, she would tell them about how she was really great mates with the founder and she was so connected to this brand. And it was this grandma. It was grandma in Singapore. It was unbelievable.
What was her favourite wine? Do you remember what she was buying?
No, God, she bought a lot, to be honest. I don't even know if she drank that much. I think she was just trying to support her mate.
That's beautiful. Speaking of the grandma, what's the ideal customer, profile look for you today? What did it look like in the early days? And and what does it look like now? Has it changed? What kinds of people are sort of ideal Vinomofo customers?
Yep. So when we launched it was very much speaking to ourselves. So like I was early 30s at the time when I launched Vino. And so we were speaking about wine in a way that we spoke about it amongst friends. And so I think it kind of attracted an audience kind of very similar. One, you had to be quite engaged in wine, like interested. Yeah. So beyond like learning, like you were like keen to learn, kind of engaged or like proper engaged in wine, but probably younger. So probably like mid-20s to 40 was the kind of bracket. And male, female, kind of slightly male skewed. But it was very much who we were and who we were hanging out with. Like everyone that was a mofo at that stage was like very much, like the people that we knew and hung out with. So that's where it was. As we've aged, our audience has also aged up. And it's funny because we're still that 25 kind of to 65 really, it's that broad. The kind of common theme though, as we've broadened and as we've aged out a little bit, is the kind of, it's an attitude. It's an attitude around wine, which is like, we were built on like no bow ties, no BS.
Yep, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, cool. And let's just, you can be super passionate about wine, but don't be a wanker. Basically, what was the thing. Like, we love wine. You can talk about it as much as you want. You can go as deep as you ever
sniff
want. Sniff it, whatever.
Yep.
Love it, and speak about it endlessly. Like, our business is a bunch of wine nerds. Like, we love it, but we just got rid of the bow ties and BS. Like, just don't be a wanker about it. Don't try and make other people feel small because you know slightly more about them in wine, that kind of thing.
It's interesting. Like an attitude rather than a demographic.
Yeah, I think so. And so it's people that fit with that because it's all about that and bringing some fun into wine. And so people that were adventurous were a little bit like anti-establishment, adventurous, and wanted some fun was kind of that attitude that kind of fit
Yeah,
with
fun
Vino.
feels definitely like a central theme of the brand. To me, there's something just hilarious about a 65-year-old ordering wine on a website called Vinomofo. I don't know if that's just me.
Half of them don't know what Vinomofo stands for.
Right.
I think it's sometimes they come. We still have upset emails to this day of people going, "I just found out what your company name."
Oh no!
It's like, oh my god, really? Sorry, I've been buying wine from you for years. Sorry, not going to change it now.
Right. So this week here in Seven House, we've been talking a lot about the power of positioning and brand platforms. On Monday, I had Optus on stage talking about It Starts With Yes. Virgin Australia were here yesterday talking about Wonderful. And of course, we're here in Seven House with their It's Massive platform. And you mentioned no bow ties and bullshit, which I guess that's sort of your platform, your sort of brand positioning. Talk to me how that came about and how do you sort of activate that? I guess it's one thing to have a platform. How do you sort of put that to use and how does that inform everything you do?
Yep. Okay. So the way that came about was actually before Vino. It was the start of Quaff. And so basically a lot of my family was in wine, not direct family, like uncles, aunties and that kind of stuff were in wine. So some of my ancestors planted some of the oldest vines in the Barossa.
Wow.
So I've got that kind of, it's in my DNA. I went and did a whole bunch of different things, but I did study wine at uni. I then kind of worked in the industry before going out. So long story short is I knew quite a bit about wine from quite a young age. And so what you did back then, a little bit different nowadays, but what you did back then when you were super interested in wine is you'd go to small independent wine stores to find the kind of interesting wines. And so I would, as a 25, 26-year-old, I'd be walking into these wine stores and every time, and I knew a lot about wine from age, there's people older than me knew more than me, but for my age, I knew quite a bit. And I had a lot of experience at it. So I'd be walking into these stores going, I'm looking for something really interesting, whether it's Barolo or Barbaresco or some kind of Burgundy or something even more interesting. And so I'd be going in and there was always, in those days, this old guy, like in a white shirt and bloody bow tie and his entire job, I think, was based on his self-importance, making everyone else feel small because he knew more than them about wine. And I was like, this is what everyone thinks of the wine industry.
And this is why people hate.
This is why people
snobs.
fucking hate it. Yeah. And I was like, this is exactly what is wrong with the wine industry, and we need to fix it, or it's gonna, it's gonna just kill itself. Because younger generation not interested in that. And so I'd walk in, and even I was intimidated, and I was like, this is not right. I know more than most my age, and probably quite a bit older than me, and I feel intimidated by this.
Right.
And I was like, this has got to change. We've got to speak about wine in a different way with different language and kind of bring fun and get rid of all the bow ties and BS. And so that's kind of where that came from. It was like, we need to do it. We need to remove it. We need to kind of open up. Back then everyone was using that word democratize in startups, but we wanted to democratize wine, basically.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. What about Death Before Sauvignon Blanc? Is that a contender for
probably
a
offended
brand
half
platform?
the people in this room, didn't?
Yeah, I don't think Mel's here, but
so let's just to be clear, there are some great Sauv Blancs in the world. There really is. Just to be clear, I've become
you're a convert.
Yeah. No, I've become less certain of my opinions in my later age. But so I think there is some great Sauv Blancs, but that came from my uncle used to teach viticulture at Adelaide Uni, and he was one of my lecturers when I was going through the study. And his description of Sauv Blanc was, it's a fucking weed. It's because it grows so easily and produces fruit so well, and you have to kind of, it can overcrop really easily, and it just, for a lot of people, tastes like cat pee. And so
that was one of the tasting notes. Yes. I remember for a while there.
Yeah. But it is, it's a gateway drug in terms of the wine industry. So it really does. It's friendly. It's fruit forward. It can be delicious. And then most people that start on Sauv Blanc will work their way into other ways. But I'm less fucking judgy than I used to be. I swear to God. Back then it used to be it was a bit more of a statement because Sauv Blanc was for everyone.
It was very big at the time as well.
We're not for we're not for everyone. And that was kind kind of along those lines.
Yeah, I guess counter positioning and creating that niche.
Yeah. It's the Apple kind of
right.
It's the
Rebels,
It's the Mac versus PC.
Right. speaking of cat pee, one of the things I remember about the early years was the strength of the copywriting. I actually didn't live in Australia at the time, but I remember
I found an email from you.
Yeah, well, I emailed Justin years ago because I subscribed to the Daily Deal emails because I thought the copy was just so good. And, as a creative, it was just great inspiration. Talk to me a little bit about how you guys think about copy and creative in differentiating against the competition. And
so I think from very early on, we're actually inspired. I don't know if everyone knows the history of Vino this well, obviously, but we started as a deal a day. So the three businesses that we started before that were not that, and then we rolled into a deal a day. So at the time, Groupon was the fastest growing company globally, and their copy was actually really clever early.
Right.
There was one writer there that was really, really clever, and like and it was really interesting. We were reading it not for the deals but for the copy. Similarly, like that's kind of cool. And then the second part was we were inspired by that. The second one was we wanted to change the way we were speaking about wine, and so we had to think about who we were writing to differently than most of the other players or all the other players. We had to think of the way that we did it was we thought about writing to our friends or family. Right. So we wouldn't bullshit. Right. We wouldn't overhype. We would kind of tell the real story. So when you chat to a friend or family about a wine, it's very different than if you were trying to sell them shit. And so that's how we kind of thought about it. We were inspired by Groupon and a couple of the great writers. And then two, we just wanted to be real, get rid of the bow ties BS, get rid of all the kind of sell, and actually think about this as in what would you recommend and how would you recommend this to a friend? And that's how it kind of
and I remember one of the things it was very sort of context driven. It was, where should you drink it? Who should you drink it with? Rather than, I guess if you read anything else, Halliday or, anything, it was sort of all about the notes.
Yeah, and it was more about like almost kind of welcoming someone into a world. Right. And it was it was funny because we all had people that we would imagine we were writing to. So I remember Andre had his best mate, Yelly. I had my best mate. And Lee had a couple of his best mates. And so we would be thinking about that. It'd be like me trying to write to my mate about why they should buy this wine. So like get rid of all the bullshit and just kind of be real. Yeah,
that's really interesting. So Justin, you had a couple of years away from the CEO role to focus on innovation and entrepreneurship. What do you think the biggest innovations or what were the things you innovated on with Vino that are sort of the reasons for your success through the years?
So I think the key thing for Vino's success early was one, timing. Timing's a big part of so many different stories of success, I think. But also is the model. So our business model and our language. So it's like the way we talked about wine with a model that was new that hadn't been introduced to the industry ever before.
So talk a bit more about the model, maybe for those that.
So basically, it was focused on premium to super premium end of the wine space. Which basically means anything in Australia is above $12 a bottle. But let's just say that ours was $20 and above in terms of retail, up to whatever. So premium, super premium, super curated. So basically, most of the wine retailers, like if you think about what's Endeavour, which is Dan's and whatever, they've got huge ranges of wine. So let's say 5, 10,000 SKUs, 20,000 SKUs through marketplaces. So super focused. So like premium, super focused, and with that focus, curation, in that part of the market, with our numbers of people behind, we had tremendous value because we could buy more than anyone else could. So that was basically the model. So it was like focus on a part of the industry focus on the space that's premium, curate it deeply. So instead of trying to put your volume across 20,000 SKUs, put it across 200, and that volume and the size of our audience allowed us to buy more wine of that wine than anyone was in the space. So
and demand a lower price.
Exactly. Yep. And so basically what we were doing is we were buying more of that wine than anyone in the country. That's including the majors. So any of the wines that we feature, we'll be buying more of that single wine than anyone.
Right. And is that still true today?
It's more true today than it's ever been.
Wow. Yeah. How many SKUs would you be sort of nowadays?
Currently, it's a rolling thing because things come in and out.
Right.
But you'd probably be sitting at about 200. So instead of 10 or 20,000, we're 200 at any one time, and they roll in and out. And so it allows us. So the disadvantage of that model is if you love something,
you're probably not going to be able to come back and get it from us again.
Right.
So if you're into the adventure of wine and having epic wine for an epic price, we're an amazing business. If you just want the same bloody Sauv Blanc every week, we're not for you.
So how do like customer purchasing patterns look in that? Are people buying, new SKUs almost every time, or?
Yeah, there's very few wines, like they come back. So like I was
Right.
just talking about, we've got an event on Friday. It's called WTF Sale. I understand what that stands for. And so what that means is we want all of our mofos to go, when they see these wines. So on Friday, we are dropping like insane wines, like Penfolds Grange, Penfolds St. Honore, like Clarendon Hills, like all these iconic, amazing things at half price. So
Can we get a early?
But the point to that was not to pitch the sale, but go and check it out. The point of that was St. Honore comes back at least 2 or 3 times a year, and when it does, we'll sell 1,000 cases in like 20 minutes, and then it's gone.
Right.
But you can get it again 2 or 3 times a year, but it's not always in. Because if it was always in, all the major competitors would find out, they'd match the price, then they'd try and charge back to the supplier for the amount of money they lost because of us. It's just not sustainable. So we've got to go in, go hard, get out.
Right. Is it a limiting factor to growth that you can't sell the same bottle of Sauv Blanc every week to that customer, or?
I think depending on, probably for a certain type of customer,
Right.
absolutely, but we're
Right.
not trying to be all
No.
things to everyone. So
Sure.
like I said, it's about that kind of, you have to be a little bit adventurous with us, because we're going, the $15 or the $20 bottle of wine that fits in your category, price point, style is going to be the best wine you can get for that price anywhere in the country at that moment. But you're probably not going to be able to buy it again, or not for another 3-6 months. It might pop in again.
Right. I want to talk about how you guys sort of win attention, cut through, and some of the PR work that you are known for. I want to talk about 2 projects in particular. One is Homeless Grapes. Talk a little bit about Homeless Grapes, where it came from, what it is, and why you think it sort of works ultimately.
So the Homeless Grapes is a project that was started in, 6-7 years ago. And basically what it was a mate of ours who is a grape grower, winemaker in McLaren Vale. And there was it was a hot year. There was a lot of grapes going around at the time. And there was a bunch of vineyards that weren't going to get picked. So the grapes were just going to fall off and be wasted. And so this mate put a post up on Facebook and said, there's a whole bunch of amazing A-grade grapes, like top quality grapes, and they're available if you'll donate something back to charity, give something back. And we're like, cool, we'll take it. We'll get our community behind it. We'll go and pick them all. We'll make a wine, and then we'll sell it, and 100% of the proceeds will go to charities. And so we did the first one. It was a McLaren Vale Shiraz, and it went to a homeless kind of charity in Adelaide. And then we rolled it out the next year. It was such a big success. Like the whole community came. Like, it was incredible. We had like 300 or 400. We had to limit the people that came to pick because we were picking in 15 minutes.
Wow.
It was supposed to be like a half day thing, and we got all the grapes in 15 minutes. And then the next year we did it again because it was such a success. And the first year I think we raised like 30,000. Like, we didn't charge for anything. Like we covered all the other costs. Winemakers covered the winemaking. Barrel guys covered the barrels. Like, everyone contributed to this thing at no cost. And so the $30,000 worth of wine we sold went straight to the charity. Then the next year it was 60. Then we rolled it out in 4 different states, and did like a Hunter Sem, a Yarra Chardonnay, McLaren Vale Shiraz, and a Cunor Cabernet. And that's a project we've done it every year since. And it's been an amazing project. Now we've got there's 4 lines of Homeless Grapes wines, and 100% of the proceeds go to charity. So it's a great one.
And I mean, it's that perfect combination of doing the right thing, but also having a story to tell and PR cut through.
And bringing the community together.
Right.
we bought an events company last year, and that was all about kind of spending time with our audience, like our mofos, and that's one of those things that that project has done for us, is like bringing everyone together for a really good cause, all hanging out, having a sausage sizzle or whatever, and just getting to know each other and spend time together.
It's funny, like in an era of mass personalization and all of that. It's sort of the value in just getting together. Still works.
Yeah, I think it does. It's just how do you, the challenge is how do you scale it to and it just becomes it becomes incredibly tricky, but you can still do it in ways, and you can use tech to kind of help. But I still think it's such an important part. And for all the middle years where we kind of like outgrew the ability to do that, and we're trying to find ways to maintain it, we're going full circle and going right back into it.
Right, back to the roots. I think one of the other really interesting, product innovations was black market deals. Talk a little bit about that one and sort of just how significant it's been for the business, and I guess its role in marketing, building hype, creative.
Yeah, so black market deals, for those that don't know, is our version of secret deal. So basically, we won't reveal a label. So we'll sell that with a bottle that's kind of hidden, and it will be like, it's a Barossa Shiraz, it's 97 points from Halliday, it tastes like this, it's this vintage, etc., etc. And so how that began was when we launched Vino in 11. We were doing one deal a day, and they were kind of open deals, and they were through friends and connections in the industry. And we started getting some really good traction really early. And so the people that didn't like that were the majors and other competitors, obviously. And so every time we put up a wine, because they were well-known wine brands, the suppliers would get a call from someone, I won't name any names, and it would be, take down that wine off Vinomofo right now, we're going to pull all your wine off our shelves. So basically risk your entire business by doing business with Vinomofo. Crazy. And so we were like, oh my God. And so we would have people calling us up and kind of getting upset, like crying, basically for fear that they're going to lose like one of their major kind of channels. And so we would pull the wine down. We'd sell enough to a point, and then we'd get the call and go, oh God, and we'd pull it down. And then we're like, oh God, now we need to find a second deal because the site's blank because we'll do a deal a day. Right. So we'd put a second deal. That's how we found out doing more deals a day equaled more revenue.
Right.
And so we'd put a second one, and then they'd get a call, and then it started happening so regularly that we're like, this is actually a real challenge for the business, like sustainability of the business, because at some point they're going to have called everyone.
Right.
And we literally, this business that's shooting, and we're like, we're so excited, let's not stuff this up. And then all of a sudden we're getting this challenge where we're like, we might actually run out of supply. So what we did, we were like, what can we do? And so then we're like, well, how about if we didn't let anyone know what it was? It was like we did a secret deal. And we're like, but are people going to trust us enough to buy a deal without actually knowing what it is? And we're like, well, if we give them the 97 points and it's this style and, blah, blah, blah. And so we did it. We tried it. And in that day, it was called the secret deal. And the first one we launched sold twice as many as any other deal had previously.
Wow.
And we're like, we might be onto something here. Let's try it again. And we did it, and it worked again. And so basically we doubled sales overnight from doing a secret deal. And then we were like, why is that? It was because it was fun and exciting to try and work out what it was. And so all these forums popped up online. Like, they're all trying to work out what it was and like share secrets and go, oh, I just heard it could have been this one, or someone knows someone who, they know who they bought it off, and blah, blah, blah. And it was all about this, like, sell this dream and you will get. And then there was no restrictions on the brands we were getting. Also because brands were like, well, no one even knows that you're selling it for half price, and I'm moving this many wines. Right. And so all of a sudden, like, we've got more supply and more people interested, and the whole internet in the wine world's talking about it. And we're like, fantastic. And that was purely driven by our competitors trying to close us down.
Do they still try and figure out the...
You know what? They became one of our best customers, because they would then buy all the secret deals to then tell the people off. But by then it was too late. And so it was fun. And so people kept dealing with us. And then it was so funny then looking at the number of deals they were buying. And then eventually we got to a point where we were so big that producers would then say to the competitors, like, no, we're not, like, pull us off.
Right.
Because there's enough here to
Right.
risk it, and you're not gonna pull everyone off anyway.
No. Oh, that's really, really interesting. And sort of testament to where you're at now. On that note, you're obviously no longer a startup. You're somewhere between 50 and approaching 100 million in revenue. So I want to talk a little bit about how you're tackling that shift, how the marketing has changed. What do you do now that you didn't do back then? What can you no longer do? You talked about scalability. Talk a little bit about where you're at now, how the marketing looks today, and maybe how it differs from early days.
So marketing, what we're doing today compared to what we we're doing earlier. So it was really easy at the start. It was a lot about referral because we didn't have any money, and we had such a good, tight, connected audience that referral was the biggest new customer channel for us. And then what the trick for us was, we got onto social platforms really, really early.
Yep.
And when they started providing advertising channels, and we got on those early, or new tools, we got on them super early. So we're always like right in really early testing, because there was all this kind of it was a land grab early for all of these things. So it was all about getting early, testing and referrals.
Gary Vee talks about that a lot. The sort of
100%.
the sort of the early opportunities on new platforms.
Yeah, and we lived it. We lived it with Facebook and Twitter and Insta.
Right.
We lived that. That was
my sense is the brand was very much built around you guys early, and all the content you were doing. You talked about Road to Vino, which was brilliant. All the other stuff. Is it less so today? Is it less about you, more about?
Yeah, it's one of those like strengths and weaknesses of a business.
Right.
When you're very early, and you don't have to pay yourselves anymore when you do stuff, so you just get in front of the camera and do it. But also, it was heavy kind of content early was powerful. So on the social platforms, you just need content, and we were doing that really, really early. And not many people were speaking about it in the same way.
Especially not in the industry.
Wine. Yeah, in wine. So I think it was absolutely very content heavy. It was very kind of founder focused. I think then as we scaled a bit more, we stuck with heavy content until probably 16, 17, and then started looking at kind of return on investment, to be honest, and focusing where the best return on investment was. We still are a content business, but we would probably produce 30% of the content we once did.
What is the best performing, without sharing anything you can't share, but sort of how does the mix look today? What are the most successful tactics?
Yeah, today, and it shifts, but at the core is Meta. Meta is very powerful for us. Facebook and Insta. At times, Twitter's been good, or X, whatever it's called now. And then you've got... they would be our main channels. We've gone super broad when we've had big budgets in years where it's growth. We're currently in a year where it's bottom line, and so we've kind of focused and our spending on the kind of best returning channels, and they at the moment are Meta for us, and some great partnerships.
And that's PPC, sort of performance ads.
Yeah.
So you talked about partnerships. How do those?
Those are things like that with an aligned audience. We've got partnerships with people like Amex and that kind of thing. So it's more kind of getting in front of those audiences,
right?
Or doing kind of projects together. But to be honest, the how that we are performing. So we're still growing year on year, where most of our other competitors are not. But the way we're doing that is through our Meta spend, and that's kind of the way that we do that is just. It's faster, there's more creative, there's more testing, there's less kind of adherence to, I'd probably say, the brand principles. We're willing to talk about the brand. It's all aligned, but it's in different language, because people react to language differently. So there's a lot of testing and a lot of creative and a lot of velocity, and that's kind of where we're winning in those channels.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. You mentioned before you've acquired a couple of businesses, Revel, Pinot Palooza, Mold, Piccolo. Talk me through the strategic thinking behind all of those. They're maybe not immediately obvious to everyone, and how that plays into sort of the growth story moving forward. You mentioned a little bit about events.
Yeah, so we bought a company called Revel. Revel had within its portfolio Pinot Palooza, which is an event series. It's actually on this weekend in Melbourne, and it's the biggest Pinot event in Australia, at least probably globally, but it's just Pinot lovers. It's over 3 or 4 days. It travels to Perth, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide. Oh, not Adelaide this year. And then they also had Mould, which is a cheese festival. We launched Piccolo together, which is a no and low alcohol event. Wanted to test the space to see what it was interesting, and the best way to do it is put something on. And so we did that. The way we think about that was it's audience generation,
Right.
and engagement. So as that skill set, we brought that into our business. The guy that started it, Dan Sims, has been a mate of mine for 10, 15 years.
Right.
One, I just wanted to work with him. And two, I like what he was doing. I love the brands he was creating.
Right.
And it's a great business, really good business. The reason we brought it in was audience generation and the skill set that we could then launch Vinomofo Live, which was an event that we did for our own audience. We did the first one at St Kilda Town Hall about a couple of months ago, which was a sellout and was amazing. So we got to meet. We basically brought the online experience of Vinomofo into the real world. Right. It was so cool. So we'd had like black market stand where people got a chance to guess what the wines were, and then like revealed them through the day so they could buy them. We tasted everything that we're currently selling. We did a Grange kind of tasting where there was like 5 glasses. One was Grange, and you had to tell us which it was. And if you did that, you got a glass of Grange. And so doing that throughout the day was really fun.
Right. I mean, it does sound very much like back to the roots, more sort of capturing people where they are, building more sustainably. Is Vinomofo profitable today?
Yes, very.
Yep.
It is.
Yep.
It's, we're probably, over the last 5 years, we've been profitable 4 of them.
Yeah.
So we had a couple of growth years where we were making lots of money, but we were spending lots, so barely profitable. And then 1 year where it was negative. This year, very good.
Brilliant. There's obviously been a lot of speculation in the press about IPOs and the like. I know you probably can't share much, but what does the future hold? What do the next few years look like?
So it's depends on market conditions, to be honest.
Right.
But at the moment, the ambition is to be the big number 2 in the market, the challenger brand. You've got Endeavour, the evil empire, and we want to be the big challenger, the brand to that. There's obviously Coles Liquors in the market, but they're not the same scale as Endeavour Group are, which is Dan's and BWS and all those ones.
How far off number 2 are you?
Not far. To be honest, I think we sell more wine than Coles online.
Wow.
And there's only one other retailer that's kind of near us in terms of numbers. Like we'd be 2-3 times bigger than everyone else. There's one which is Naked, but they sell to a very different audience. Right. And I think, is this being recorded?
Yes.
I'm not going to say it then.
Smart move. Interesting. I want to move on to the what I sometimes call the quick fire round. Sometimes it becomes the not so quick fire round. Justin, what is your favorite marketing campaign of all time? Any brand?
What's the by Apple? The Think Different. I love that.
Yeah.
The Think Different ad. And what's the other one?
You spoke about Mac versus PC
that one, exactly.
Before. Yeah.
Mac versus PC and Think Different. They're so inspiring.
Yeah. Did you see Justin Long did the PC side recently?
No.
Microsoft hired the Mac guy to play the...
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, that's kind of disappointing, I thought.
No, that's awesome.
What's the best brand in the world right now? What brand inspires you to be better?
There's so many better people to ask this question than me. Look, I think Nike's incredible.
Right.
Like the Just Do It thing, the tribe that they build, I think that's amazing. But I don't really.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think a very good example of a tribe sort of driven marketing. What's the most overrated trend in marketing right now? What are you sick of?
Probably instantly I go, there's so much data in the world and everyone's collecting data and talking about data, but very few people actually use it well.
Right.
So I think that kind of, we need another tool, we need some more data. Like that thing is completely overrated.
Right, makes sense. The opposite, what's the most underrated trend? What still works that everyone ignores?
What still works? Like speed, I think.
if you look at, and also like not being perfectionist is probably like just speed, getting things up and testing them and going into platforms early. Like if you see the number of ad tests and creative we go out with, it's mind-boggling, and that's how we get such good results through these channels.
Thanks for listening to the Own the Moment podcast. If you liked this episode, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss upcoming episodes. And to suggest a guest or provide feedback, please visit our dedicated podcast hub at ownthemomentpod.com.